Wounded by Love, the Life and Wisdom of Elder Porphyrios. There's a village in Greece, in Evia. That's where I'm from. My parents were poor, so my father left the village and went to America. He worked there as a laborer on the Panama Canal. In the village, we children did chores from the earliest age. We would water the garden and the trees. We would bring in the animals. We would do whatever jobs the grown-ups told us to do. When I was little, I used to mind the flocks up on the mountain. I was slow-witted and shy. I went to school for only 1 year, and we learned virtually nothing because the teacher was ill. While I was looking after the sheep, I read the life of St. John the hut dweller, syllable by syllable. That's where my zeal to go and become a monk came from. Even though I knew nothing, I hadn't even seen a monk or a monastery. Nothing. When I was 7, my mother sent me to work in a shop. It sold everything. Shops at that time used to have ironmongery, keys, screws, locks, also ropes, and so on. But they'd also have sugar and rice, coffee, pepper, everything you'd find in a grocery. It was a big shop. There were 2 other boys there. I went and joined them. I did whatever they told me to. Everyone bossed me about, and I was never off my feet running. Before I arrived, the 2 other boys had worked out a system whereby they would go to the balcony day after day about to water the basil plants belonging to the boss's wife. They had a rota. When I arrived, they got me to do everything. To sweep the floor, water the flowers. It didn't cross my mind that it was unfair. I did everything. Whatever they told me to do, I went and did it. One day, just as I was finishing sweeping the floor, I noticed that some coffee beans had spilled on the floor next to where I had gathered my pile of rubbish. There would have been about 15 beans in all. I bent down and I picked them up and I walked over to the sack with the coffee beans. My boss was in his office. It had windows all around, and he saw me bending down and then walking over to the sack. He called out, "Angelos," meaning me. That's what they used to call me when I was young. "Come over here." I went over. "What have you got in your hand? What's that?" "They're coffee beans. I found them over there, and I picked them up," I said. He started to shout for the other boys. One was in the storeroom, the others in various parts of the shop. The boss kept shouting. They all gathered in the office. The boss opened my hand. "Do you see that?" "What's that?" he asked. "Coffee beans," they answered. "Where did you find them, Angelos?" "They were littered on the floor, and I picked them up and was about to throw them into the coffee sack," I replied. Well, my boss started to give us a lecture. What went on in that shop was nobody's business. Such wastage. Scoops would be tossed right, left, and center. "Listen now," he said. "As from today, you're going to organize a rota for the jobs in here. 1 week it will be one of you, 1 week the other, and 1 week Angelos. For the flowers, their watering, and for everything else." My boss's family became very fond of me. They would invite me up to their house, and they would get me to sing to them whatever hymns I knew. They looked on me with real affection. My action in picking up the beans had made an impression on them because they didn't know me. After 2 years, I went to Piraeus to work in another shop owned by a relative. This shop was also a tavern. There was a little attic there where I slept at night. The shop was on a hill. People would come by every day to do their shopping, and many of the customers would sit down to have a drink or a snack since it doubled as a tavern. One day, 2 elderly men came into the shop. They sat down and asked for 2 sardines and some wine. I fetched their order at once. Then I heard one of them say to the other, "You should see the wine I drank on the holy mountain. I haven't found wine like that anywhere." "So you've been to the Holy Mountain, have you?" asked the other. "Yes. I left my house and I went off to the Holy Mountain. We used to drink wine there." What wine was that? "Did you go to become a monk?" queried the other man. "Yes, I wanted to be a monk, but I wasn't able to. I wasn't up to it. But honestly, I regret now that I didn't stay there." I listened to all this with great attention because some time earlier a group of monks had passed by handing out booklets. One was about the life of St. John the Hut Dweller, which, as I told you, I had stammered through syllable by syllable while I was looking after the sheep in the village. I had reread it up in the attic by the light of a little lantern, with considerable difficulty because I hadn't learned to read properly. The life of the saint filled me with such enthusiasm that I wanted to imitate him. But about the Holy Mountain, I knew not a thing. "I want to become a monk, but I left," continued the old man. "How marvelous it was there! I saw monks, hermits, holy men, striving to love God and battling away in the wilderness with fasts, deprivations, prayers. But I left it all behind and returned to the world and snarled myself in 1,000 cares and troubles. I remember it all constantly, and I regret I didn't stay there instead of landing myself back here in the world with all the troubles and trials that I had. All these cares of life have brought me to my knees. Yes, I remember it all." Soon the two men got up and left, but my mind remained captivated by what I had heard. From that moment, I was filled with zeal to go to the place where he had been speaking about. My mind became fixated on the idea that I would realize my dream of imitating St. John the Hut Dweller. It became my all-consuming desire. 2 days later, the elderly man came in again. He lived close by. I went up and out of earshot of the others. I asked him, "Tell me, what are things like up there on the Holy Mountain? Is it a good place?" "You heard about it the last time, I guess." "I can't tell you anything at the moment," and he didn't tell me anything. He left. But in the meantime, could I think of nothing else? Not at all. I developed a deep desire to become a hermit. But how? I didn't know how to get to the Holy Mountain. I had no money, nor did I know what to say to my boss. The man came back once more to the shop. Once again, I secretly asked him about the Holy Mountain, and this time he told me everything. But how was I going to leave, and what was I going to say? For days on end, I was downcast and lost in thought. My boss noticed it. He came up and said to me, "Why are you so unhappy? What's the matter?" I'm afraid I couldn't help telling a lie. I said that I had left the shop to go and fetch some food supplies. I had heard from someone from my village that my mother was ill, and I wanted to go and see her. He believed my story, and he gave me money for my ticket to go to my mother. He also gave me food to take to her, and showing his sympathy, he accompanied me out onto the road and wished me a safe journey. I ran down to the boat. I had set off for the Holy Mountain. I had begun to realize my dream. The boat was to sail, and I was on it. But after the boat had put to sea, I began to feel miserable. I wanted to reach my destination, but I was afraid, and I felt sorry for my parents, who, not knowing where I was, would be sick with worry. I couldn't do it. When the boat put in, I got off and took the next boat right back to Porphyrios. I returned to the shop and announced that my mother had recovered, and so I carried on my work as before, but not exactly as before. I was pensive. I prayed continually. I ate little. I made prostrations, and as a result of all this, I lost weight. I changed. "What's the matter, Angelos?" people would ask me. "What's wrong? We can see that there's something on your mind, my boy, and you've lost a lot of weight. You know we're fond of you, and we want you here. But do you perhaps want to go back to your parents?" "Yes," I answered. "I want to go home." "Go and see them then. And when you come back, bring with you another lad, and he will also work here. And so again, they gave me money, food, and sweets, some bottles of liqueur, and various other items. And my boss took me down to the boat this time, and he bought me a ticket. It was a boat bound for Chalkida and other places. The boat was called Athene. I got on board, and the boat set off. It was after dark when we left. We sailed all night. Eventually, we arrived at Chalkida. When the boat had tied up, the sailors shouted, "Anyone for Chalkida? Anyone to get off here?" I kept my mouth shut and didn't say a word. I had snuggled up in a corner and kept quiet. The boat set sail, but when we arrived at the next place, the sailors discovered me because they were checking the tickets. "Why didn't you get off at Chalkida?" "I was sleeping," I replied. "What are we going to do now?" they asked. "You're going to have to pay." "I don't have enough money," I said. "Never mind then," they replied. And so they took me along without paying. Money at that time was counted in 5 or 10 cent pieces. 1 drachma at the time would have been all I had with me. When we disembarked, I was suddenly overwhelmed again with melancholy. I started to cry and cry. I thought about how I was going to leave the world forever, and about how my parents were going to lose me, and how they would be distressed and worried. I thought about my brothers and sister. Something seemed to be choking me. I wanted to go back. The boat stayed for several hours, and everyone got off. Then the whistle blew, and it put on for Thessalonica. I stayed on shore, intending to go back. I spent the night up on a hill, crying and praying. The next day, I found the boat that sailed the same passage, and I got on board. My money had finished, and so, not having a ticket, I hid so that they wouldn't pull me off the boat. At one point, the sailors asked to see my ticket. Of course, I didn't have one, and they berated me loudly. I sat on a bench on the port side of the ship, weeping. As I wept, I looked out at the sea, and I sang to myself a verse from a hymn I'd been taught by my father. He was a singer in the church, and he used to sing this hymn whenever All Souls Saturdays came around. The words were like this: "Beholding the sea of life swollen, high and raging wild, and through temptation's lasting storms, racing on to the calm of your haven fair, I cry, Lord, raise up my life from destruction and save me, O all merciful one." My life, O Christ, is a tempestuous sea. I said that to myself. And just as I am sailing on this rough sea, I ask for you, for your divine providence, to lead me to a harbor so that my soul can find stillness there, in the harbor that you are, you who are peace. I said all this, or rather sang it softly, and wept because I was deeply affected by the fact I was leaving the world. That is, I was leaving my parents. The world didn't matter to me. I wasn't concerned about the world, only about my parents. I was little, and I remembered only my parents, and I was pained that I was leaving them. Midday came, and people started eating on the deck. They sat together in their family groups, as people used to do then. Opposite me was a woman with her husband and their 3 children. I was sitting looking out at the sea. At one point, a lady came up. Because the sailors had asked for my ticket and I didn't have one, people had seen that I was poor. And she tapped me on the shoulder, and she gave me a piece of bread with 3 little bunches of white bait. In those days, people used to fry white bait in little bunches of 3 tied together with a piece of grass, which they passed through the fish's eyes. They would then dust them with flour and fry them. I said to her, thank you very much." Some of the other women who were nearby said to her, "Well done. That was a kind thing to do. How come you thought of it? It didn't occur to us." The woman, however, turned round and said to them, "No one should bother about children like that little urchin. nor give them anything. But what are you to do? We're human too. When I heard the words little urchin, I, poor little wretch, suddenly felt a surge of happiness inside because I thought that I really am a little urchin. I had become a little urchin for the love of Christ, and I said to myself, "Oh Christ, save me and guide me." Eventually, we arrived in Thessalonica. We got off the boat. I didn't know where to go. I went to the church of St. Demetrius and I kissed the icons. I knelt down weeping and implored the saint to help me to become a hermit. That was my dream. Then I climbed up a hill and came to a little church, a country chapel. It was locked, but outside there was a wooden bench. I stayed there all night. I cried a lot. I wanted to go home to my parents. This was a sore temptation for me. 3 times I went back. While I was weeping, I kept repeating the words of the hymns of supplication to Our Lady that my father had taught me. Do not despise my supplication. Do what's profitable to my soul. I said this again and again through my tears, and so I fell asleep. I forgot to tell you what I did with the presents that my boss had given me, supposedly to take to my family. I gave them away to some young conscripts on the boat. I gave away the chocolates and the bottles of rose and peppermint liqueur, and so I got rid of them. The soldiers were at a loss to understand why I was giving the things away. I was just a little boy, but they took them all the same. So I was saying, I fell asleep outside the little chapel. I woke up in the morning. I went down to the sea, got onto the boat. The temptation was just too much for me. And I returned again to Porphyrios. What can I say? It's a long story. Following all these futile journeys and about turns, after some time had passed, I took a firm decision to leave and not come back. I resolved not to get off the boat. Once again, I embarked from Porphyrios without return for the holy mountain. It was the 3rd time I was setting out, the last after all my misadventures. When we arrived in Thessalonica, it was Saturday. At that time, Thessalonica was dominated by the Jewish community. People didn't work on Saturdays. It was a ghost town. Everything was closed, neither boats nor sailings. We had arrived late on the Friday evening. Everyone got off the boat to buy something to eat. I didn't get off because I was afraid of temptation, that I would go back. I was frightened that something might happen to me and I wouldn't arrive at my destination. I gave someone 15 cents and he brought me bread and mackerel, and I ate. For the whole day, we all waited in the harbor because, as I said, nobody was working. As evening approached, monks started to arrive and board the boat. I watched them in awe. For the first time, I was seeing monks in their cassocks. I had positioned myself by the gangway, and from where I stood, I could see them all passing by. At one point, a tall, elderly, and venerable-looking monk with a long white beard and with a haversack on his back walked up. He came towards me. He took a seat on a bench, and he motioned me to sit down. "Where are you going, my boy?" he asked. "To the holy mountain," I replied. "And what are you going to do there?" Concealing the truth, I answered, "I'm going to work." "Well, come with me. Live with me and my brother in a hermitage in the desert. Come along, my boy, and we'll all glorify Christ together." Then he asked me, "What books do you read, my boy?" "The letter of Christ, the letter of Our Lady, and the life of St. John the Hut Dweller," I answered. "I haven't been much to school." He made no comment about the books. "Come with me," he said. "We've got work there, and we'll pay you, and we might even make a monk of you." As soon as I heard that, a smile crossed my face. Then he said to me, "Listen, my boy, don't be upset at what I'm going to tell you. Young boys like you are not permitted on the holy mountain. You're very young, and they're prohibited from allowing you to enter." My face fell. "But don't worry. We'll tell a little lie, and God will forgive us. In God's eye, it won't be a lie, but a truth, because you love Christ and you want to go to the holy mountain to worship Christ. So whoever asks you, what's your relationship to the elder? You'll reply, he's my uncle. And I'll say that you're my nephew, my sister's son. Lots of other monks crowded onto the boat. Night fell. The monks all huddled close together, and each took out his food. We sat close to them, too. The elder gave me bread to eat. What's your relationship to the boy, Holy Confessor? They all asked. He's my sister's son, my nephew. My sister has died, and because he's an orphan, I've taken him with me.